How's it hanging, guys?
Welcome back.
It's Mrs. Klein,
And Mrs. Wolbrin.
and we are here today for Chapter 10, Lesson 4 for your podcast. This lesson is entitled The War of 1812. And if you remember, you guys, in the last podcast, we learned about the events that led up to the War of 1812. And in this section, we're going to learn about the war and its effects on the United States.
We're going to look at the big idea and the essential question. The big idea for this chapter is the same: conflict brings about change. And the essential question: why do countries want to expand or add new territory?
Okay, and we've got some key terms and names that you guys are going to need to be responsible for. Only four this go around, but still, you want to make sure that you're really familiar with who they are or what they are and how they connect with the content. The first is Oliver Hazard Perry. Second is Battle of the Thames. 3 is Francis Scott Key. And finally, the fourth vocabulary term is the Treaty of Ghent.
And we're going to get started. We're going to start with the section titled The War Begins. Britain was already at war with France in 1812. It did not want another war with the United States. British leaders announced that they would stop interfering with U.S. shipping. But slow mail prevented this news from reaching America until it was too late.
Gosh darn, that darn postal service. Okay, all right. The War of 1812 had two main phases. From 1812 to 1814, Britain concentrated on its war against France. After Britain defeated France in 1814, British leaders turned their attention to the United States.
When the war began, the United States military was weak. The Navy had only about 16 ships. The Army had fewer than 7,000 men. These men were poorly trained and equipped. They were led by officers with little experience. Does this sound familiar?
I was just going to say, it definitely kind of sounds familiar. It's been something that's happened kind of time and time again. Okay, all right. The next section, you guys, is the first phase of the war. If you're following along in your book, you can find this information on pages 331 and 332. Although the U.S. Navy was small, it performed well. American naval officers had gained valuable experience fighting pirates overseas. The Navy's warships were the fastest afloat. And early in the war, before the British blockaded the coast, U.S. ships won battles that boosted American confidence.
The most important U.S. naval victory took place on Lake Erie. In September 1813, a British force on the lake set out to attack American ships. Oliver Hazard Perry led the American forces. The two sides exchanged cannon shots for 2 hours. After Perry's ship was demolished, he rowed to another ship and took charge. He then went on to win the battle.
Dang, that's a guy who definitely has got some gumption, okay, in order to be able to row after one ship is destroyed. Okay, after the victory, Perry sent a note to General William Henry Harrison, who then set out to attack the British on land. By the time Harrison reached Detroit, the British had fled to Canada. Harrison pursued the British forces and defeated them at the Battle of the Thames. This victory ended the British threat in the Northwest. The battle also claimed the life of Tecumseh, who died fighting for the British.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, so you should be able to answer this question: what was the importance of the Battle of the Thames?
And the next section we're going to talk about, the second phase of the war. Now, something to think about as you're listening, I want you to be able to tell us, after listening, what happened at Fort McHenry. The war in Europe ended in April of 1814. After that, Britain concentrated on defeating the United States. They attacked on several fronts.
The British attacked Washington, D.C. There, they burned public buildings, including the White House. They then attacked Fort McHenry at Baltimore. A Washington lawyer named Francis Scott Key watched the all-night battle. At dawn, Key saw the fort's flag still flying. He showed his pride by writing what became the U.S. national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner.
In the north, the British sent a force from Canada across Lake Champlain. Its goal was to push south and cut off New England. The plan had failed by September 1814. At that time, an American fleet defeated the British in the Battle of Lake Champlain.
In the South, the British made the strategic port of New Orleans their target. Here we go again, you guys. New Orleans is important. We talked about how important it was for the United States to control that port. Okay, all right. So the British made the strategic port of New Orleans their target. A U.S. general, Andrew Jackson, put together an army to defend the port city. When the British launched their attack, they were quickly defeated by Jackson's soldiers. The Battle of New Orleans made Jackson a hero. Even so, it was unnecessary. Officials had signed the Treaty of Ghent, which ended the War of 1812 2 weeks earlier. Slow mails, once again from England, had delayed the news.
This is really exciting because
Yes.
we're being exposed to some future presidents.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, we've got
William Henry Harrison,
and Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson.
Okay, the legacy of the war. The Treaty of Ghent showed that the war had no clear winner. Neither side won territory, and border and trade disputes were not solved. But the war had 4 important consequences. 1, the heroism of Americans increased patriotism. 2, the war weakened Native Americans who had sided with the British. 3, because the war had interrupted trade, Americans were forced to make many of their own goods. This encouraged the growth of U.S. manufacturers. And 4, finally, the United States proved it could defend itself against the mightiest military power of the time.
For 2 times. Second time.
Oh,
second time.
for the
no,
second time.
no,
Did it
like
say that?
no, it didn't. But I'm just saying, for the
Oh.
second time, we're able to beat the most powerful army in the world. Okay, all right. You got the Revolutionary War and now the War of 1812.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, you guys remember that you have a podcast quiz in a couple of days, and the terms that you're responsible for are Oliver Hazard Perry, Battle of the Thames, Francis Scott Key, and the Treaty of Ghent. All right, see ya.
Okay, mission accomplished.